What is going on, everybody? I am AJ. I am going to break down UFC Fight Night, Gane versus Rozenstruik, but I, of course, am not alone. I am joined by John Kelly from Fade the Noise. Pleased to be sitting down talking these fights with him. While I'm standing, he's sitting. But we're going to go through these fights in order of Tapology. And before we do that, I'd just like to check in with John. John, how are you doing? And thanks for doing this with me, man.
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Super excited to make my inaugural appearance on your show. Definitely been listening to you for a bit now. I know you know your stuff, and I'm excited to hear your takes on a couple of the upcoming matchups. I know we only got 11 fights, but there's a couple good ones that I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, likewise, man, and 100% agree. If the viewers are not annoyed by the banner already below, you guys can follow John at John Kelly DFS. JONKELLY DFS on Twitter. He puts out a lot of great content. He's got a bunch of followers, and rightfully so. So I recommend him as a follow, 100%, 2 thumbs up. But yeah, John, we're going to get into the fights. I guess I'll briefly introduce this first one. Dustin Jacoby versus Maxim Grisham. You know, to me, it's just a too close of a fight for me to bet. I think it's just two kickboxers here, technical, experienced kickboxers that I just slightly favor Jacoby. I think he's a bit better of a kickboxer. He's younger, and I like his output slightly more. I'm not expecting him to go out there and get another leg kick finish because, like I say, Grisham is very experienced. I think he's going to be wise to that. But I slightly edge Jacoby here, but not really too interested in it from a betting or DFS perspective. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I pretty much see it the same way. I think I'm a little bit more confident in the Jacoby side just because since he's had that long layoff, since coming back, he took like 4 years off. He has looked kind of like a different fighter. We saw his last fight out against Justin Ledet. He got the early stoppage in the first round. And on the flip side, Maxim Grisham, I'm just not super impressed with. I know for somebody that has such a solid professional record, he's had 2 losses over his last 24 fights. Against Marcin Tybura, fighting up a weight class, and then Magomed Ankalaev way back in the day. But for somebody that has such a great record, he really doesn't impress me much. Like you said, he doesn't throw a lot of volume on the feet. He has a little bit of power, but he's also typically getting outstruck as well. Doesn't have great takedown defense, which I think could be an aspect here. We've seen Jacoby mix in takedowns, at least on the Dana White Contender Series fight. So I lean Jacoby. I think it's lined about right, though. Don't have a play on it either way. In terms of DraftKings, I do favor Jacoby just because I think he has a little bit more finishing upside. And with Grisham, it's yes, he got that finish and scored decent his last time out. But if he doesn't get an early round knockout, he's not going to score well.
Yeah, 100% with you on that. And viewers, recording this early, the DraftKings salaries are not released, and judging off FanDuel's recent history, those salaries are probably not released either. But we're saying this out of just assuming that the salaries are going to be placed as they typically are based on the odds. So Jacoby would of course be more expensive than Grisham, but it would be aligned in such a way where Grisham would be the underdog price accordingly in respect to all the other fighters on the card. But I'm with John on this. I just think that again the matchup that Grisham had against Ankalaev was just far different. We know Ankalaev has just a very few minutes of gas in him, and so Grisham was able to wear him out, weather the storm, and get the finish there late in round 2. So I'm pretty much with John on this, 100%. And it's always good minds think alike. And then we've got the next card, or next fight rather, Ronnie Lawrence and Vince Cachero. John, I'll let you start this one off. I know you have a stronger take with this one.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about before we started rolling here. I really like Ronnie Lawrence here, even though, he's making his UFC debut. I like him for a couple reasons. He was impressive on Dana White Contender Series, at least with the pace he fights at, landed 12 takedowns in that matchup. He showed some solid wrestling technique. I think that's going to be a big factor here against Vince Caceres, who I'm not necessarily impressed with. Jamal Emmers took him down 5 times. You mentioned on the regional scene, he was taken down and mounted immediately. He's just not somebody that I think can really threaten Lawrence here, who's a really durable guy. And Lawrence trains at American Top Team, a much better camp as well. So it's just I basically see Lawrence having all the advantages here. I think the striking is where it gets a little bit dicey. I could see both guys having moments, but I think with the wrestling aggressive style that Ronnie Lawrence does, where he's always looking to take the fight to the ground, I think that's going to be the difference here. So I actually did back him at -158 over on FanDuel.
Yeah, and I'm with John on this one. We're agreeing here 2 fights in, but it's just the way it is. Lawrence, I love his pace. I mean, you said it. 12 takedowns in the Contender Series. That is not easy to do. We see just so few guys do it in the UFC. Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Ricky Simone, Merab Dvalishvili. We value them so much. Not just in terms of like winning, especially matches where they have the wrestling advantage, but like even like DraftKings, they rack up, especially with the new scoring system update. Even in FanDuel, where the grappling isn't valued as much as say it is on DraftKings, they still add up. And like you said, we talked about he was taken down by Emmers. Okay, if we want to give him an excuse there, which again, Emmers, he was fighting up a weight class there on short notice. We know how talented Emmers is when he's on, but we also saw on the regional scene too. He was taken down. He was immediately mounted. I don't think he's like a straight up poor grappler, but like we saw with Lawrence, he should be able to take this fight to the ground. He has a cardio to do it for 3 rounds, and he's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. And he can threaten a little bit on the ground. He doesn't seem like the most threatening submission grappler, but it's nice to know that he has that in that back pocket and he is developing. And, even on the feet, I think you said that that would be where he's most at risk of losing is Lawrence. But, I agree with in the sense that he could hang there. He's wise to the fact that, he's a grappler, and he in striking exchanges like standing all the way out away, and he's landing those low calf kicks that we know a lot of the American top team members like to land that pay massive dividends. So I like that about him. He's got the IQ to go out there and implement his game plan. And I think you're on the right side here in terms of backing Lawrence. So glad we see it the same way. And then we got a light heavyweight fight where we were talking beforehand. We do disagree here, but it is a higher variance fight. And William Knight, Alonzo Manifield, these two guys are extremely physical, even for the standards of the light heavyweight division. I mean, both of these guys look like they could compete in Mr. Universe, Mr. Olympia. I mean, you name the bodybuilding competition. I mean, these guys could literally pull it off, especially Knight. With that style, we see it time and time again with these guys with big muscles in the UFC. They got the physicality, no doubt about it, but we know that the big muscles require oxygen. They need to manage their cardio. They tend to fatigue as the fight goes on. But we were talking beforehand. I think you made a great point about Knight showing that he could go out there and fight 15 minutes in that UFC debut in grapple. My hesitation with backing Knight is, while I do think he can control Manifield if he happens to get in top position, I like Knight, the fact that Knight does, no basic jiu-jitsu concepts. He looks to sink in the hooks if presented the back. He does look for submissions. And we saw Manifield get his back taken by Clark. Even on the Contender Series, he was taken down by Jolly and controlled. My thing is they're just both really, really green, but I ever so slightly favor Manifield, just more seasoned in the UFC. I think he's a better striker of the two. I don't think he's a great technical striker, but Knight leaving his chin really high makes me a bit nervous for him in this matchup. He has been stopped via strikes once against a very talented Tefan Njukwi. I think I got that right. But like I said, I don't want to bury the lead here. This is a higher variance fight, from my opinion, from my standpoint. I'm going to slightly lean with Manifield. I know you like Knight here. Why do you back his side?
Yeah, and we pretty much see it the same way. Like, this is a high variance fight. Both of these guys, you mentioned the power. Like, these guys are absolutely massive. Each of them have 8 of their 9 professional wins coming by knockout, and most of those are in the first round. And really, the only reason why I favor Knight is because Manifield is pretty much knockout or bust, and Knight is almost knockout or bust. But we've at least seen him, like you said, against Alexa Kamer, he went a good 15 minutes and he was still able to land takedowns in that fight. Mentioned the power wrestling that he has, and the wrestling has been the way to give Manifield problems in the past. And Manifield just doesn't have like the fight IQ. I told you I backed him against Devin Clark. Like, just get off the fence. Like, that's all you have to do is get off the fence and literally just land anything and you'll knock the guy out probably. And he like, even in his last fight against Ovince St. Preux, at times he could have separated, and he was inviting the clinch and inviting the grappling exchanges, which, like you said, is just going to take the air out of his muscles and cause him to gas out faster. And that's what happened. And he paid the price, getting knocked out in the second round. So it's just like you said, it's a high variance fight. In terms of DraftKings, I think you definitely want to have both sides of this fight. It'll probably be one where I'm looking to split it 60-40, one way or the other across multiple lineups. But in terms of the money line, I do think there is a little bit of value on Knight just based on what I see as the cardio advantage alone.
Yeah, fair. And I like your point about the fight IQ. Manifield, he didn't show good fight IQ in his two most recent fights, right? He should have kept the fight in open space against Clark, where he had a chance to knock him out, and we saw he almost did. But he kept clinching, and then OSP, he was just all the way stuck at kicking range, and OSP was just countering him repeatedly. So yeah, maybe he learned something from it. He trains at Fortis MMA, but it still isn't the most encouraging thing seeing that 2 fights in a row. We'll see exactly how he responds, but like you said, there is definitely some DraftKings upside there. Of course, there is the chance that they go out and clinch with each other for 3 rounds, but there is upside there with the finish. I totally hear you on that, and with the grappling with Knight, like you said. I'm gonna get off of UFC stats. We'll go back to Tapology here. Then we're on to the next fights: Alexis Davis and Sabina Mazzo. Wide age gap here. That's like the thing that sticks out to me. 13 years. Mazzo, 23 years young. Alexis Davis, 36 years young. And to me, it's kind of like, from my viewpoint, I think they're going to do it's like a prospect versus veteran type of matchup here. Mazzo being the prospect, Davis being the veteran. Do you kind of see it the same way? And do you favor Mazzo just like the odds makers do?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really see it any other way. You have Alexis Davis, who's on a 3-fight losing streak, coming off basically a 2-year layoff to fight one of the up-and-coming prospects that everybody's excited about. Like, this is the typical UFC feeding a veteran who's probably on their way out to an up-and-coming name that they're trying to get behind. So, I mean, it makes total sense. Sabina Mazzo has been somewhat impressive. Obviously, I think she was a little bit overhyped coming into the UFC just because she had a couple of those head kick knockouts that she's famous for, and she'll throw a lot of those. And I think they have a chance to land here against Davis, who takes a lot of damage and doesn't really take damage well. But what I do like about Mazzo is she just fights at a high pace, lands over 7 significant strikes per minute. She's landed over 100 significant strikes in all of her UFC fights. So I do like Mazzo. I don't think she's like a future champion or anything like that. Like I know some people are very high on her. I think she's promising. She has a future, but in this matchup, that's really all you need to think about her to think she gets the job done.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much with you. It does seem like, yeah, it's her fight to lose. I'm a little worried about her getting stuck on her back. Like she got taken down from Kish by a caught kick. She got stuck on her back for the rest of the round 1, albeit it wasn't too long. And we even saw that against Munoz. My thing with like Davis, even though I like her top control, I like the fact that she has urgency to close distance and get the clinch. And she will pass guard in top position. She held down Jennifer Maia. She held down Viviane Araújo, 2 women that are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. I think she's going to have a hard time closing the distance on Mazzo. I just think Mazzo's going to be a lot quicker than her. Her footwork, her feints are very nice. Like you said, she's got those kicks that she could utilize at range. She has straight punches. And she is on the rise. I do hear you. I do think she needs to make significant improvements before we talk about, potential title shot. I think that, but there is at 23 training at Kings MMA. I guess we'll see how it plays out, but I'm pretty much with you. I think the striking should heavily favor her. Davis just takes too much damage. Like you said, she just gets hit a lot. I saw her hurt against Maia. And even though I don't think a knockout is the most likely thing, Mazzo racking up damage over the course of 3 rounds should be enough for her to win on the judges' scorecards, I think. So it's pretty much just Davis take her down, top control for at least 2 rounds or bust. That is kind of how I see it. But yeah, I think we nailed that one. And then on to the next fight. We got, if I can get to it. Oh yeah. Alexander Hernandez, headliner of the prelim versus Thiago Moises. I'm really looking forward to this one. I've backed both of these guys in the past. Moises against Johnson, which that was a huge sweat after round 1. But Hernandez against Gritzmacher, maybe one other. No, I think that was it actually. But Gritzmacher, I think they both have upside. I don't think that these two guys are like that. They're finished products right now based on their age and based off where they train. I love the fact that Hernandez went out to Denver, Colorado, and moved out to Factory X Muay Thai. I think that was the type of move he needed to really catapult his career. Because I've always been high on Hernandez, and I know people are kind of low on him because, you know, we see this through the years. The prospects get really hyped up, and then we see them lose, and then everybody's just kind of down on them. It's just like, okay, like he lost to Cerrone and he lost to Dober. Like, I mean, those aren't bad losses at all. I like the move. I think he's really well-rounded. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, good wrestler, great athlete, good striker. And I think he's got most of those advantages here outside of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think Moises will be competitive in all those areas, but I edge Hernandez as an athlete, as a striker, and as a wrestler. Should be a little quicker. Do I want to pay the juice on him? No, because I do respect the game of Moises, and I do like that he trains an American top team. He's another guy that's 25 is what Tapology says, so he has potential to get better too. And again, regardless of what people think about the Bobby Green decision, I mean, I thought it was still a good showing by him. So I'm going to side with Hernandez as far as a pick goes, but I'm not going to back him in terms of a bet in this spot. Do you kind of see it the same way, or do you like Moises as an underdog?
No, I pretty much see it the same way as you. It was really nice to see Hernandez not just get back in the win column, but the way he did it. Like, you could tell right off the opening bell there, he was back to his confident self. You know, when previously, after getting knocked out a couple times, you know, he seemed a little bit timid in there with Francisco Trinaldo. That fight comes to mind. You know, that was like the most boring fight in UFC history. They landed like 25 significant strikes each. Nothing happened for 15 minutes. And I think that was just because he was just a little bit timid after getting rocked a couple times and sort of being humbled after coming in with so much swag, you know, and beating Beneil Dariush and some of these other guys. And then now it was good to see him get some of that swagger back, because right against Grussmacher, right from the opening bell, you know, it seemed like he was back to his normal dangerous self that's willing to trade a little bit and get a little bit more risky, take some chances. And he looked great doing it. But I agree with you. I mean, his wrestling's legit. I think he's a better wrestler than Thiago Moises. Maybe not a better submission grappler, but the story with Moises is that he's always a dangerous submission grappler. He just usually struggles to get the fight there. And obviously against guys like Michael Johnson, he didn't need to, right? I actually had a lot of Michael Johnson on DraftKings. I didn't bet him in that spot. But after the first round, I'm like, oh, baby, we're looking good. I'm like, just don't get taken down. And then, you know, what was it, like a heel hook or ankle lock or something in the beginning of the second round. So that was rough for me, but happy to hear that you cashed on Moises. I was impressed with Moises striking against Bobby Green. You mentioned the Bobby Green fight. I think some people, myself included, like, I kind of wrote off his striking early on in the UFC. I'm like, this guy's a grappler only, submission or bust, and he can't wrestle. And in that Bobby Green fight, his striking looked very much improved from the first time we saw him in the UFC. And you mentioned the camp American top team. So it makes sense, right? So I actually think he does have a chance to hurt Hernandez on the feet, but that's sort of the only path to victory I see for him here. And I do still think, despite Hernandez, you know, arguably being a little bit chinny, I do still think it's a low percentage outcome. So I like Hernandez here, but like you, I'm not paying the current price.
Yeah, 100%. And Moises, he's got some knockouts on his resume, but yeah, he hasn't really flashed a ton of power in the UFC. Like he looked like he hurt Bobby Green briefly, that's impressive. Bobby's really tough to hurt, but it looked like a knuckle to the eye sort of thing. I mean, he hasn't really shown to like rock guys. So yeah, I think a knockout is, you know, probably not the most likely thing, but like you said, I mean, Hernandez has still been knocked out a couple times, so it is something worth monitoring. But yeah, I think that's going to be a fun fight. 100%. That is the headline in the prelims, and we move on to the main card. Alex Caceres and Kevin Kroom. Man, I don't know about you, but like Caceres is a big favorite. What is he now? I think he's like minus 240 or something. Yeah, like depending on what book you look at, around minus 200. Like, just seeing him as a big favorite when he has this long history of being very competitive or making fights a lot harder than he needs to, like choosing not to finish Chase Hooper, choosing not to follow up with Austin Springer in the early going when he had him hurt, eventually got the finish. But even like the Martin Bravo fight, he had him hurt. Like Caceres just plays around a little too much. He just doesn't fight with a whole lot of urgency for 15 minutes. So Do you feel fine backing Caceres here as a big favorite? Because personally, I don't.
Absolutely not. I think the story with Caceres is like, there's what do they call that? A flow chart. So the flow chart is Caceres a big favorite? If so, fade. Is Caceres an underdog? If so, bet. And like you saw it against Chase Hooper, he was like a 350 underdog or something like that, and he looked like the favorite in that matchup. And then now I even saw like a minus 265 against Kevin Kroom earlier this morning on one of those books on Best Fight Odds. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa. And it's not that I think Kevin Kroom is that good, but I do think he's at least similar to Alex Caceres in that, both of these guys are opportunistic finishers. And Caceres has invited the grappling at times. He's a good grappler, but sometimes he's a little overconfident. So he tends to put himself in some bad spots. And Kevin Kroom is the same exact way. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of finishes by submission, but he's also been finished 8 times inside the distance, 4 by knockout, 4 by sub. So I just think this is one where both guys could have some moments. I wouldn't be shocked if either guy got finished, but I do lean Caceres. I think he's more experienced at this level. I'm not going to overweight Kroom's ability just from the early finish against Roosevelt Roberts, which was crazy impressive. 1 day's notice. I know it was overturned later for the marijuana suspension, but regardless, I mean, that was super impressive. He does have finishing upside, but I lean Caceres. It's just the line's too wide for me.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much with you. It's just like I favor Caceres. I actually think he's a better fighter pretty much everywhere, better striker, better athlete. He's obviously much more UFC experience, but you mentioned it, Kroom, he does have definitely some submission capabilities, and we've seen Caceres get his back taken multiple times. I mean, he was almost submitted by Steven Peterson. So, I mean, again, it's just like I'm not going exactly out on a limb with picking Caceres, but as far as a bet goes, it's just a complete pass. I mean, I was on him on DraftKings against Springer last time, but I think, like you pointed out, he was like a big favorite. He was priced cheap on DraftKings. So I'm like, it was just kind of like an insta play, more or less. But yeah, I mean, it's just, unless if there's some funky DraftKings pricing, which I doubt because this is not short notice or anything, I'm more than likely going to be pretty much off Caceres for DraftKings for the most part, and definitely not from a betting perspective. All right. And then a rematch here that was really recently put together. Ashley Yoder versus Angela Hill 2. I remember the first fight. I actually didn't go back to like tape study it because I still had like notes from it from their previous fights and whatnot, but I went back and watched each of the recent fights. I don't think the dynamic changes all too much. I know Yoder's got some reach on her, but we know Hill's just the better striker, more technical, better footwork, better volume, better defense as well. So Yoder pretty much just needs to, I think, take her down for at least 2 rounds and hold her or get a submission. And we've seen the improvements in Angela Hill's defensive grappling through the years. I mean, she had that loss to Marcos, but since then, I would argue it's gotten much better, not just in terms of like her takedown defense, but like actually how she defends on the ground. Now, obviously, we saw her taken down and held down by Gedalia in the first round. We saw the same thing with Michelle Waterson in round 3, but we saw she didn't really let them get off on any damage on her. It was pretty much just control. I think Waterson got a little bit of damage off when Hill was trying to work up to get defense, but she's done, for the most part, a good job of limiting damage, limiting, significant, not getting mounted, etc. So I bet Yoder against Miranda Granger, but I thought that was a really good style matchup for her. And I just think that it's going to be Hill here that wins. I'm not too interested in betting her at the money line because I just think there's, I think the decision line was like minus 180, but even that, I would rather play that or just pass on it completely. Yoder's really tough. She's never been finished. Hill's flashed some power recently, but, I just generally think it goes to the decision. I'm pretty much off of it for DraftKings. Do you kind of see this fight the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like we're on the same page again. I also bet Ashley Yoder against Miranda Granger. So there's another one where we kind of saw it the same way. But yeah, I like Angela Hill. You mentioned the improved takedown defense. I know she's only like 77% or something throughout her career, but more recently, she's definitely made improvements. yes, Claudia Gadeler got her down once, but she stuffed a couple takedowns in that fight. And then against Michelle Waterson, she stuffed like, what was it? Like 13 attempts or something. She gave up that one takedown. But aside from that, you know, over those 5 rounds, she stuffed a bunch of takedowns. So I don't think Ashley Yoder's going to be able to. Oh, okay. So she stuffed 17 takedowns in that fight. That's impressive. And I don't think Ashley Yoder's going to be able to get her down. You know, Yoder's not even somebody that really aggressively wrestles. She lands like 1.25 takedowns per 15, I want to say. And I know she got Granger down a couple times, but Granger's one of those that sort of invites the grappling. That's not going to be Angela Hill. She comes from a Muay Thai background, former Muay Thai champion, and she stays super active on the feet, good boxing. I just think Angela Hill pieces her up. Ashley Yoder's kind of a liability on the feet, in my opinion, against competent strikers like Angela Hill. You know, against Miranda Granger, you can get away with being super hittable and not throwing a ton of volume. Against Angela Hill, I think she's going to be pieced up even more so than the first time they fought back in 2017.
Yeah, 100%. And with rematches, I kind of take them with a grain of salt because, well, and I say that because, you know, sometimes we see rematches that are booked, you know, years later, like 6 years later, like McGregor-Poirier, a lot could change in the meantime. But I just kind of look at these rematch bookings and try to, you know, fill in the missing pieces of the puzzle. What exactly has each fighter changed in the meantime? And, you know, I even thought the same thing with like Carlos Diego Ferreira and Beneil Dariush. Even though Dariush took him down and that was a big difference maker, I didn't think he was going to take down Ferreira and just kind of keep him there for the whole round, you know, from one takedown. So yeah, there's always reason to believe that these fighters have improved. And I think both ladies have, but it's like we say, it's just a similar dynamic. Yoder needs to take her down and control her, but it seems unlikely with Hill's strong takedown defense. Like you said, it's 77%. That's what the stats say. So yeah, I'm pretty much on her as well to win, but not as far as the bet goes. And then we got, you know, Jimmy Rivera and Pedro Munoz. This is 2 rematches in a row. Pretty interesting that they found the card consecutively, but like, for this, do you kind of see it going the same way? Like, do you think it's going to be like competitive but clear for Jimmy? Because after doing research, that's kind of how I see it. I think Munoz is going to be game like he always is, but I think Rivera is just slightly better of a striker than him on the feet. What say you on this matchup?
Yeah, you know, I'm trying to disagree with you, man, but it seems like we're pretty much on the same page on a lot of these matchups, and it's really tough to see it playing out any differently because Jimmy Rivera is the better striker. He's the better boxer. You know, his left hook and right hook, like those were money all 15 minutes against Pedro Munoz the first time. That's not going to change this time. Munoz is somebody that has been very hittable. We saw it against Frankie Edgar. We saw it against Cody Garbrandt. And yes, he's made a living on being like a super durable guy who's willing to trade in the pocket and just take a heavy blow to give one right back. But that's not really going to work against Jimmy Rivera. It didn't work the first time. You know, he had him hurt. And I know he's known as a durable guy, but Rivera had him hurt. I know he had Rivera hurt as well. But that Cody Garbrandt fight, he was wobbled in that fight as well. So it's not like he's impossible to knock out. And I just think Rivera is the better striker. He's not going to be taken down. 92% takedown defense, pretty much shucked off all the takedowns the first time they fought. So I don't think Pedro Munoz is going to be able to have much of an opportunity to use that patented guillotine. He tried it unsuccessfully once or twice the first time. Rivera's just so good, man. He's so well-rounded. I really think he's underrated. You know, against Cody Stamann, who's a guy that I respect a lot in this division, I thought it was going to be pretty close. We had Stamann at a decent underdog price, and it just wasn't even close, in my opinion. Like, Jimmy Rivera at this stage, I think is actually underrated, and I think he's the much better fighter than Pedro Munoz. So I like Jimmy Rivera. I haven't backed him yet in the betting market. I think he's like minus 145, but that's one that, you know, maybe possibly later this week, maybe even tomorrow when I look into things a little bit more, that's probably going to be an ad for me. What about you?
Yeah, as far as a bet goes, even though I haven't bet it, I do think it's still favored or pass. Like, for Munoz to win, it's like he needs to kind of tire Jimmy out. It's possible, you know, Jimmy got tired against Almeida, but part of it was just because he was beating the crap out of Almeida early, dropped him, and went for the finish. Got a little tired, got a little excited, and I think it was in New York where he's from. But you know, like Jimmy's just better technically. Even if he doesn't knock out Munoz, like you said, Munoz is just so hittable. His head just gets snapped back so often, and that just creates a visual in the judge's eyes. It's like, oh, he's taking a lot of damage. That's part of the reason why he lost against Edgar. Again, people could debate that split all they want, but why it was as competitive as it was, because, like you said, he is so hittable. He could take the shots, but it just doesn't create a good visual. So, like you said, Jimmy's been rocked. He's been rocked in the past, like against Jan, we're looking at here, against Moises. But unless if Munoz is able to swing rounds on rocking Jimmy, I think Jimmy's better technique, better defense is going to prevail. And he's got a little bit of reach on him, nothing too significant, like 3 inches or so. And I am with you to kind of just close out this fight with Jimmy. He is underrated, I think, because we're looking at his losses here. Okay, he got finished quickly to Moises. We know Moises is really dangerous in round 1, but I'm pretty convinced, especially what we know now, that if that fight plays on, Jimmy probably wins. We know he's just got much better cardio than Moises and so forth. And Aljamain Sterling, I mean, we could talk about this another time, but like I personally feel like Aljamain's the best 135er, right? I think he beats Jan.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay, you're on the same page. All right.
Oh yeah.
But it's not a bad loss at all. And Aljo just looked great. I mean, he just kept him at range, and so it's not a bad loss at all. And we know the Piotr Jan fight, and I promise this is the last thing I'm going to say with Jimmy's resume. The Jan fight, he won the aggregate of the exchanges. He lost rounds 1 and 2 just because he got dropped with like 10 seconds left or so. And so it was like, you watch that fight, he was chewing him up with leg kicks. I mean, this is the champ of 135, and he was beating him outside of the 2 knockdowns. So yeah, I'm with you. Jimmy is, even though he's great, you could argue he could be better than even his resume suggests. So we talked long about it, but it's a fight worth talking long about. I mean, that's a very highly anticipated fight at bantamweight, no doubt about it. De La Rosa and Bueno Silva, Montana De La Rosa and Mayra Bueno Silva. This is my first bet that we'll talk about. I like Montana De La Rosa here. I finished up tape on this, and as soon as I finished up the tape, I took the shot on her. I was on Bueno Silva against Mara Romero Barella, but I actually inside the distance specifically, but I just thought that was a really good matchup for her. I don't think this is the best matchup for her, to be honest. I mean, she's a good guard player. Like, we see she could threaten you with subs, like she caught Robertson with one, aforementionedly Barella, but like, she's so content to play guard that, I think that if she doesn't get a sub, she's just going to get held down like we saw against Moises. And Montana is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. She's shown me enough composure and capability as a submission grappler to where I trust her, especially in top position, to avoid any sort of guard sub. And I think she's a better wrestler. She's got double legs, body locks. We saw Bueno Silva taken down by everybody in the UFC that tried to take her down. And Bueno Silva, I like her low kicks. I like her pressure and power, but she's very, very hittable. She's kind of like plodding with her footwork. And I was very impressed with Montana's striking. Like, that was a huge difference. Like, watching her strike against, say, Mara Barella to the Viviane Araújo fight, that was like a night and day striking difference. She showed better technique. She incorporated nice like check left hooks, some countering proficiency, and some feints. So I think she's a better striker as well. Like I say, though, I can't. It's not like I can't see Bueno Silva winning. I could see her having success with the low kicks. We saw Vivi have success with the low kicks against Montana, but I think Montana's just a better wrestler and better striker, and that's why I think she should be favored, and why I did take a 3-unit shot at plus 124 on her. So let me know if you think I'm crazy on this one, but I personally feel like Montana should be favored here.
No, I definitely think it's a dog or pass situation, just because with Bueno Silva, you mentioned it, like, yes, she's dangerous in terms of like her power, but she's not a great striker. Questions about her cardio, and she's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is somebody who's never landed a single takedown in the UFC. So it's like, if De La Rosa doesn't look to wrestle, which I don't think she should, I think she beats her up on the feet over 15 minutes for sure and wins a decision. It's just one of those things where I've lost a lot of money betting on low-level women's MMA, so I'm personally not going to do it. But if she comes in with the right game plan, I think she could certainly beat Bueno Silva in this matchup. It's just she has to avoid just like an arm bar from guard or something after she takes her down. Like, I honestly, if I have money on De La Rosa like you, I'm just hoping she doesn't even look to wrestle here, because I think she will win for 15 minutes on the feet. I don't think she'll get knocked out. And you mentioned the striking improvement. That was very clear in the last fight, especially. That was something that jumped out to me as well, was like, whoa, because normally it's like she's okay wrestling, okay grappling, not a great striker. So it's like she's in these close fights. That's that last fight against Viviana Raju, that was very impressive to me. So I think she's going to have a pretty clear striking advantage. I think she'll be at an overall probably strength disadvantage. But again, the cardio questions with Bueno Silva, I think that if this goes the distance, and I expect it to, then I think De La Rosa probably wins as long as she can avoid like, first round submission or something like that.
Yeah, and we're looking at the stats here with the Araujo and De La Rosa fight. They were actually very comparable in terms of volume. Vivi won based off optics, and that is part of the risk with my bet. We see Montana, her nose specifically kind of gets busted up in some fights. Maybe that creates a good visual in the judge's eyes, but it's just a spot where if I'm wrong, I'm wrong on this one. But it's a spot where I just want to take a chance on because I just feel like she should be favored. And I have been burned on some of these sorts of spots in the past as well. So maybe this is another spot, but I feel solid about it, and we'll see how it plays out. But I'm glad you see it the same way. And then we got the co-main event. Even though I got a bet on this one, I'll let you lead. Do you think Ankalaev rolls here yet again?
Yeah, it's really hard not to. Everybody's super high on him. Obviously, he's arguably a top 3 guy in this division. Only loss coming against Paul Craig on that Hail Mary submission. So it's one of those things where he's super tough to beat, man. Like, he's such a good striker, super technical on the feet. And this is actually like an interesting matchup in the sense that Nikita Krylov is also a technical striker, but it's just one of those things where it's levels. Like, Nikita Krylov has basically been matched up with a lot of guys who are looking to wrestle and grapple. That's not going to happen here. So yes, Krylov looks like he's a superior striker against some of the grapplers that he's been facing. But when he faces a legitimate one of the better strikers in this division, I just think he's going to be absolutely pieced up, and he really doesn't have the durability to go to war with Ankalaev either. So I know Ankalaev could knock people out, could go to decision. I'm probably expecting a decision here, but it wouldn't shock me if he just knocked out Nikita Krylov. But what are you thinking here? Because I actually haven't seen your bet on this one, so I'm excited to hear your take.
Yeah, so I got on the line pretty early. I got 3 units at -275, and I'm pretty much with you. It's just like Ankalaev, and maybe you think the same thing, but especially with John Jones out of the division, he could be the future champ. Maybe that take looks horrible from a couple of years from now, but I do think he does have the tools to do that. He's much better technically, more defensively sound. The range management I like, the counters. We've seen Krylov's durability hold up for the most part. Like, obviously it's light heavyweight. He has been rocked. Like, he got rocked against Serkinov, but Ankalaev knocking out Kudalaba tells me he's got that. Obviously he's got power, but he's got that precision, that sort of Israel Adesanya, Stephen Thompson, just type sniper-esque striking where he could just hit you with the perfect shot. Because prior to that fight, we hadn't really seen Kudalaba. He certainly wasn't knocked out in the UFC. But we hadn't really seen him get rocked, and Kudalaba dropped him bad earlier in the part of the round, and then the second knockdown, he knocked him out cold. So I'm with you. He is super talented. I think he's got him beat on the feet. The stats like him, 41% or for 41% striking defense for Krylov. He does throw with more volume, but like we say, that the range management, the defense of Ankalaev, we're looking at it right now, 68%, only absorbs 1.36 significant strikes per minute. That should be able to prevail him. I think the counters will be there for him. Krylov is pretty wild. He's aggressive, which I like, but he definitely leaves openings. And slightly disagree with you. I actually do think that Ankalaev may try to wrestle here. I agree that that's not like his main focus. Like, he does prefer to strike, but just seeing Krylov just taken down pretty much by everybody that wants him down, 52% takedown defense. We saw OSP take him down 3 times. He has this tendency of hanging on to dude's neck when they take him down. So they're just able to pass to side control like easily. Even though Ankalaev is more so like a half guard player, like just kind of keep you there, ground and pound. I think the passes will be there for him. Maybe he could advance an amount just based off how kind of sloppy Krylov could be. I thought he looked pretty good grappling with Teixeira, but for the most part, he's kind of looked vulnerable on the ground and on the feet. But I mean, yeah, it should be the most stiff test, arguably, for Ankalaev. This is the best opponent he's faced in the UFC, you could argue. But I'm with you. I think he rolls yet again. Better striker, better grappler. And we'll see how his career pans out. He's young. He could get better. And like we say, with John Jones out of the division, there's some more openings, certainly. We could see maybe the belt kind of change Shane's hands here. Obviously, we got that fight with Israel and Yan coming up, which we're all looking forward to. But it's not so boring for some, for people that don't want to see the same champion reign year after year. So it's exciting. And then we got main event, Zero Gane and Rozenstruik. We actually talked a little bit about this before we went on air, but basically it's like, I just think Gane's much better. Rozenstruik has power. He comes from a kickboxing background, but I would argue that Gane is a much better kickboxer, more defensively sound. Rozenstruik just doesn't really move his head a whole lot. 36% striking defense for Rozenstruik, memory serves. Gane is very good at moving in and out of the pocket, pot shotting you, not landing the combination so he could hit you at range and just slip out. I think Gane's more varied on the feet. I think he's craftier, and it might be kind of a sneaky take, and I'm going to be monitoring the sub line. I think Gane might just be able to be like, I'm just going to take this guy down and not even play around with him on the feet, take him down. We saw Rozenstruik get his back taken by Albini. We saw him taken down by Overeem and held down. So I think Gane's a better striker, better grappler. He should be the better round winner here. It's just like that X factor. We know Rozenstruik hits extremely hard. He could carry that power late in fights, even in round 5, like we saw against Overeem. So we're coming off a main event where a big underdog with big knockout power, heavyweight, got the upset. But I'm not going to let that discourage me from picking what I think is a better fighter here, who I think is a better fighter here in Zero Gane. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, 100%. You bring up a lot of really good points there. And listen, I'm a Rozenstruik fan. I backed him a lot in the past. I wanted to back him at a big price here as an underdog, but it's one of those things where everything you look at points to Zero Gane. Many people have him pegged as a future champion, and it makes total sense. He has all the skills, super light on his feet. You mentioned the technical kickboxing background. And the main thing that you alluded to is he limits damage, similar to Magomed Ankalaev that we talked about. He's just so good at limiting damage coming back the other way. And against a guy like Rozenstruik, who needs to have that big moment, I just think that's going to be key here. And I do think there is a massive wrestling and grappling edge that you alluded to as well, in that, if Zero Gane, if Gane wants to take him down, he's going to have no issues doing that. Junior Albini took him down. You mentioned Overeem. At least Overeem's actually a good wrestler. But so I think there'd be no issue if he wanted to take him down. I think if he does land a takedown, he'll control him the entire time. I don't see Rozenstruik working back to his feet. And it's just one of those situations where unless Rozenstruik has that Derek Lewis moment that we saw last week, unfortunately, outside of that, I think we see Zero Gane get the win here.
Yeah, 100%. And it was a pleasant surprise seeing Gane in his first 2 UFC fights, really just go out there and grapple. This guy was billed as a striker, very credentialed striker, and he's going out there and shooting takedowns on guys and getting heel hooks and arm triangles. But it's a pleasant surprise. It tells me that this guy's got a well-rounded game. It tells us that he's got a well-rounded game, and maybe, who knows, he could be champion one day. It might sound kind of bold to some because he's only 7-0, but we've seen this guy fight enough times. He doesn't fight like a 7-0 fighter. This guy is exceptionally talented, and that doesn't mean that this win streak that he's on, this is going to be where he gets the title. No, that's not what I'm saying, but he is still young. But this guy does have, I think, all the tools to be champion of this weight class one day. Do you kind of echo the same sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes sense. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see not just how he looks here, but this is really one of the, I guess you could say, the first real power puncher that he's faced. I know JDS has power, but let's be honest, he's probably past his prime at this point. But this is one where it's he previously fought Dontel Mays. I know he has power as well, but this is one of those things where he's actually facing a dangerous guy. And I think that's the first time we can really say that for Cyril Gane. So I think it's an interesting litmus test, because the higher you get up in this division, that's where you're going to start facing the Rozenstruiks, the Francis Ngannou's, those guys. So it's one of those things where, yes, I think he could be a future champion, but I'm also like excited to see him pass those tests.
Yeah, me too. And it would be, and this is just thinking down the line, but it would be really interesting if the stars aligned to where he has to fight Francis, because the two of them, he's claimed as like Francis's protege. So that'd be really, really interesting if the two were to square off for, say, the belt or something. But yeah, I'm with you 100%. That is a good point. Yeah, Rozenstruik is undoubtedly the biggest hitter that he's fought in the heavyweight division. Where you mentioned Mays. Bozer's much more of like a point fighter. He has his game, but again, much more of a point fighter. But yeah, I mean, I think we nailed the card, man, from top to bottom. Really talk about all 11 fights. Time recording this here, people. I know we had some cancellations here, but this is the up-to-date card from our viewpoint. Time recording this here Monday in the evening. And that'll wrap things up. I want to thank John for doing this breakdown with me. You guys could follow John at John Kelly DFS. Like I said at the beginning, he does a lot of great work for Fade the Noise, which is a very good fantasy. And you guys do betting as well?
Company? We do, yes.
Yeah, good fantasy, good betting content. So be sure to check them out. They got a lot of big names there, including John. So, John, I'd like to thank you. And is there any sort of other information that you like to plug here at the end as we're wrapping up?
No, man, that's pretty much it. I definitely appreciate you having me on. We got a fun little card on Saturday, and then we move into March where it's just absolutely loaded. I know you got a bunch of your plays up already. It seems like you're always ahead of the curve, posting bets that are months out. I definitely appreciate the work you put into the sport, and the industry thanks you. And thank you for having me on, and good luck on Saturday, man.
Likewise. Thanks, man. And yeah, no problem doing that. I don't want to procrastinate. I just think procrastination is evil. So I want to avoid it at all costs. But I'm glad that you guys all like it. But that'll wrap things up for us, folks. Thank you guys for tuning in, and good luck on all your bets.